So welcome back to those fighting words, and we have here Rod Kim, musician,
Hey, what's up?
content creator, and I guess you is that what else do you consider yourself? I guess YouTuber and all the above. Is that
My business card says songwriter, YouTuber, 90s nostalgia junkie. Or
mm,
if it's not enough space, it says 90s kid for short. But yeah, I'm a songwriter by day, and then content creation is kind of funny because I mean everybody knows now like if you do anything creative, you also have to be a content creator.
yeah?
I kind of fell into that a little bit early. So but not on because we'll get into it. It wasn't like I set out to do that. It just kind of like happened by nature of the landscape.
Okay. So when you first moved to LA, did you set out to was your goal to become a songwriter, or which came first?
Yes. So ever since college, I went to school for music.
Mhm.
Actually failed as a composition focus. Because it's way hard. Music theory is way harder. Like I remember hearing stories of people like leaving music theory and composition or just majors in general to go to do like literal rocket science,
Mhm.
because it's just it's tough. So but I did graduate the music degree, and then but I always wanted to write both music and lyrics or whatever. I just pop music. I'm not really like a film composer or anything. uh but then I don't know, I toured solo for a little while. This is really truncating. There was like a lot of history there. And then I moved
Mhm.
to LA with my band at the time. We had a little bit of a YouTube presence, but looking back on it, I wouldn't have counted those years because we were back in Delaware. And the only reason we were there was because I had just been using YouTube as like home videos, and stuff.
Mhm.
And then our band consultant at the time was like, you got to get on this because like a few years before Google had acquired YouTube, and they're like, you got to just like insert yourself into this YouTube thing so that your stuff, like your band, starts popping up on Google searches. So we were literally just doing everything. I think our one of our very first video was actually a lyric video, so that made sense. The second video, I think we were literally at like Kennett Square Mushroom Festival interviewing my friend James, who was like coordinating the music for it. It has nothing to
Mhm.
do with anything we were doing. I mean, we were there, but like we had no idea what we were doing. Then we moved to LA, and I remember being at a party at the YouTube space for anybody that remembers it. And if anybody that doesn't know what YouTube space is, it's essentially like a soundstage, like film studio for YouTubers to use. It's not around anymore. Well, not around for most creators anymore. It's not open to the
Mhm.
public like it was. And went to a party there, and I just remember looking around, and it took all of like half an hour to be like, oh, I get it. And so we vastly changed everything. We started doing more like intentional content and stuff. And because I guess we figured if we're gonna put ourselves out there, we have to at least like try to know what we were doing instead of just like
Yeah.
throwing stuff out.
Okay. And when you first started your channel, it wasn't you alone. Was it you and Vince, or
Yeah,
did
yeah.
you have another channel before that?
As far as like YouTube channels we are trying to actually make move forward and stuff, it was, yeah, me and my a buddy Vince. We had a band called RKVC at the time, and that channel, it never really actually like blew up. We had a couple, like, I wouldn't even really call them by today's standards, especially viral videos. Back then, they were notable because I was actually telling some newer creators that are on like TikTok and stuff. Like back then, I remember there was some circles of friends where we were like, man, 50,000 subscribers. No one's ever gonna get more than that. Like, and
Yeah.
obviously that's changed. Granted, like now I think actually in the middle of recording this podcast, I might be hitting 100K in my personal TikTok channel. Let me check
Oh,
that, see if we
nice.
hit that. That's, um, fast forward to that, and even that's like small beans now. Let me see, where am I at? Because my neighbor, he has like 10.5 million.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
see. I'm at 99.9. Okay, almost. So maybe by the end of this recording.
That's cool.
So but yeah, so it transformed to like actually everything. We were just trying everything. So
Hmm.
in that sense, it was kind of similar to what we were doing before LA. but now it was more intentional. So it was like we were paying attention to like if something wasn't working or if something didn't make us happy or whatever. Cause like that, and it's always that Venn diagram of like what is fulfilling to you, what does the public want to see, what is your, within your scope of possibility, and you try to find the common point between all those things. And I mean, I think the first thing we got notoriety for was Seven Types of People at Guitar Center. It was like a comedy sketch of like the kind of customers that would shop at Guitar Center. And honestly, I don't know why that hit necessarily. It might have been on some guitar forums or something, because that video was out for a
Okay.
full year with like 100 views, and then in like a few days, a year later, it went to like six figures and just kept growing. Um, and then like then we ended up doing stuff like interviewing famous film composers and TV
Mhm.
composers like Ron Wasserman, who did Power Rangers and X-Men, the Silvershires, who did Gummy Bears and Tailspin. um I run the channel by myself now, and so since then I've interviewed like Ryan Elder, who's done Rick and Morty. He did the theme song and the score for that, and
Oh,
still
nice.
working with Ron Wasserman. But and that channel, yeah, it's gone through different phases. It hasn't really been that active in a couple years now because I've been busy with music work, my day job.
Okay. So like with your day job, like how different is that from your social media world? Tell us a little bit about that, how you fell
in
into that.
like how it got into it. Actually, I would have to credit a lot to social media for it, because I don't know if I could actually paint you a path or draw a map of like how it worked. It feels like you just keep trying, and then when something like sparks, you just try to keep that fire going.
Hmm.
I know that's really vague. But the closest specificity I could get to it is that like I remember going into YouTube, and this is not to like subtweet anybody or anybody, if anybody I know is listening to this, I'm not like calling you out unless it fits, I guess. But like I remember going into YouTube stuff. And when I say that, like once again, nobody knew who we were. Like we were just throwing stuff on YouTube. Uh we were just thinking like logistically. I think that first year we were actually trying YouTube, we got like 500,000 views on our channel overall, which is kind of funny because I have friends that do that in an hour now, or less.
Yeah.
But as a band, we wouldn't have had 500,000 eyes on us touring every shitty bar in the country for a year, so uh it was like a decent trade-off. And um then like I don't know, we are like I specifically went into more into songwriting during lockdown, ironically enough,
Hmm.
because I started running China by myself, and then I kind of decided like I'd always wanted to be a songwriter, and everything else was like supposed to be an avenue into it. So I was doing music for a bunch of YouTube channels already, and then pop songs, and then like I figured, if there's a year to screw up my life, 2020 is the one, So
Yeah.
I hit up a friend. I didn't hit. I we were doing one of those weird like distance, outdoor dinners or whatever. It was like me and two other friends, and we sat like 6 feet apart from each other. We're talking, and
Yeah.
um, and one of my buddies, like he kind of worked in the financial space for creative work. So like he would help get like Katy Perry and Lizzo projects funded or whatever. And they it wasn't really inside information. It was just kind of stuff that if I had thought about it long enough I would have arrived at. But it made sense. He was like, all the big players left town,
Hmm.
and budgets are slashed to a fraction of what they were. However, I'm still here, and a
Yeah.
fraction of their budget is like an annual salary for me or something, or at least close. And so I was kind of able to like prove myself in these. There was so many moments of like, well, I'll preface this. I don't want to discourage anybody from making the most of where they're at if they're not in one of these big hub cities. However, if you have the ability to move to one of the big cities and where your industry is happening, and you're talking yourself out of it because of excuses, because of like someone saying like, well, you could do this anywhere now because of the internet, That's kind of true if you can make it work, but if it's not working, then I think it's a heavy advantage being here because I want to say like 90 to 100% of my work came from like, hey, can you be at Venice Beach in 2 hours,
Yeah.
and just because something fell through, something happened. I'm just so today, I was trying to figure out like when I would be available because I didn't know if I had a meeting and I had all this recording sessions earlier today. Last Thursday, I got hit up for literally the largest project I've ever, like the biggest scope of work I've ever done solo, and
Yeah.
um, it all stemmed around from I had worked with this project like entity before, this producer before, and they had something else that they were contracted to do, and someone fell through, and they needed someone like that day. And
Yeah.
so they got me on a Zoom call like we are right now. We talked for about half an hour, and then suddenly I now from at the time we're recording this, like I guess like a week ago from the beginning of November through February, I'm 100% booked on my time. Like I don't have hours in the day to work. But that wouldn't have happened if I was back in Indiana or something, at least not this specific opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. So so in terms of scoring, do you do any, I know a lot of musicians do like they write songs for TV or video games, stuff like that. Is that kind of what you get hit up for, or is it could be anything?
Yeah, I'm not too picky. I try to be honest with people though when they have like
Mhm.
more of a scoring project. I'm like, I'm not really a scoring composer. Like
Mhm.
I can do it. However, I know people that are better and faster at it that I would recommend, and not, you live in LA too. It's not cheap. So like
Yeah.
I would definitely love the work, but I just try to be transparent. Sometimes they're like, you know what, good enough. We'll work on it, and I do my best. But for the most part, I want to say it like really leans heavily on like pilots for stuff and YouTube shows. I haven't really had anything hit TV or film yet that I know of. However,
Mhm.
I will acknowledge this, and maybe we'll come back to this a year or two from now, and this will be a funny little interview because every songwriter, composer, whatever, creative in at least in LA has that story where like I was just working, and then like one day I found out I had a number one or whatever, and I'm in that phase where I'm just like cranking out stuff, and
Yeah.
I haven't had time to look back. So I don't think anything's hit yet, but I also haven't taken the time to sift through stuff to look,
Yeah.
and it might, soon, or maybe it has, and I just haven't seen the paperwork for it. Um, I am TV and film has been interesting though because I signed with Maximus Music Group a little over a year ago, and they've been super nice. However, I also my first signing was in the historic double strike of Los Angeles, Hollywood, like
Yeah.
and so there's not been really many opportunities to play stuff there, but I've been really busy with YouTube shows.
Yeah.
I'm currently working in a lot of ads. So that's one of the reasons I say like I don't know what to cite just yet because uh there's so many ads and I don't get served all of them, and also I don't even know if they're all here or in this region or this country or whatever. I I do know, speaking of Ron Wasserman, so hopefully most 90s kids are familiar with, Power Rangers and X-Men. So if you're familiar with that, you may or may not know the story, but like Ron is not credited on paper writing those songs because Haim Saban, who I've never met personally, I will say, I don't know if you've heard any stories about him. He doesn't have the greatest
No, I
reputation
haven't.
in town. And Ron has been very vocal about how he feels about him, and he's been the nicest. However, Haim had, and this is all legal, so it wasn't like wrong legally, but Saban had done had ooh, let me turn that thing off my watch. Um Ron was under a work for hire contract with Saban. So anything Ron wrote underneath that, umbrella wasn't credited to him. So people are like, "Oh, he must be doing well. He wrote the Power Rangers theme or whatever." He's like, he doesn't see any of that, because
Oh,
but he told me that he doesn't regret it because that was what 30 years ago, and he's never
something
stopped
like that.
working. And so we were having lunch. I want to say it was maybe weeks or not too long after lockdown ended, and and even before then we were chatting, texting and stuff, and he was just like, I it would really encourage you to like do not be afraid of doing the same, because when I went to college, I remember they kept telling us like never do work for hire, you won't get the credit and blah blah. And I think maybe like 20 something Rod really really wanted credit.
Hmm.
I'm 41 now, and I like paying my bills and eating. So like
Yeah.
I don't like good majority of my work is not credited, and but I don't know. I haven't really it hasn't been bad so far. It's been like maybe 2 or 3 full years of doing this myself, and
Okay.
it's been pretty good. And like I kind of it's turned into this fun opportunity to keep learning without like the what's it, like the anchor of like a thing or a stigma. Because like if so say like Ron got well yeah, say where Ron got like pigeonholed as like the Power Rangers guy, and then he he also wrote he did music for Hot in Cleveland with Betty White.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't I don't know if people would have like hired the Power Ranger, like if like you were like just that's a bad example though, because like he was known by then, but like you know what I mean, like if you started down a path where you were known for like the one thing and then you just kept only taking those gigs. I've been able to work on so many different things. I was working on metal projects. I was on a rock project once. It was one of my
Hmm.
earliest projects. I love rock music, but I'd never really considered myself one of those guys because people always saw me as like a pop guy, and I like
Hmm.
pop music. I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, do. Um, but that was I had this realization of like I've just kind of been believing what people tell me I am, and so like I kept the radar open, we'll put it that way. And I remember being in the studio laying down demo vocals for a project I was on, and it was a rock project, and we were fully intending on the vocals to be replaced by a better singer. And I went in and I just kind of did the thing because I do demo vocals all the time. And the recording engineer, who I now know pretty well, but at the time we had never met before, and he was like, "Dude, like, how long you been doing this?" I was like, not I don't do this. I was brought
Okay.
into this rock project because they wanted it to be melodic, because sometimes I don't know if they still do this a lot, but I enjoyed this about 90s and early 2000s music is if you had like a hard rock band, you would
Yeah.
bring in a pop person to like add melody,
Yeah.
to something. And that's kind of what I was brought into this project for. And that kind of opened a can of worms where I have a lot of like heavy rock projects out there that I know friends that they enjoy it. And then I don't think they know it's me, and I don't need them to know, either I wrote it or performed it or something. And so it's been nice not having this sounds terrible, but the burden of credit, like and
Yeah.
then you get paid more upfront if you're doing it right to, not to, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've been in music long enough to know like exposure doesn't, pay your rent.
Oh
So
no.
uh we're not doing the exposure thing anymore. Or we'll put it this way, like if it's friends and stuff, obviously like we do what we can. But like
Yeah.
if it's somebody I know they have a budget or whatever and we're doing something and everybody I've worked with so far has been really great. They know like we're going to pay more upfront because you're not going to get credit for it. And if this blows up, it blows up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I feel like it's worked out for everybody. But and that was another thing. Like I just kept trying, even if this big project I just took on. I was a little bit nervous, I won't lie. But when I actually like sat down and looked at everything logistically, it's like there's no technical reason I can't do this except
Yeah.
cold feet. So let's just do it. And that's what the last 3 or 4 years has been. And are you familiar? Do you know Mari Takahashi, Atomic Mari?
Yeah. I think I briefly met her at that panel when I met you.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I don't
Mari's great.
know her, but I know of her. But
Mari's great. She was one of my biggest cheerleaders always, but especially like in 2020 when I was doing this venture alone and stuff. And specifically because I was like, us Asian folks don't get like a whole lot of FaceTime and stuff,
yeah.
and or have we haven't had the opportunity of having a reputation of working in spaces like this a lot. And she didn't say this then, but this is one of her slogans that has always stuck with me. She had some merch back in the day that was her slogan: "Show up and don't be an asshole."
Yeah.
I've carried that with me everywhere. It's just like I feel like it's the easiest cheat code you could have to stuff like this is like if uh you show up to things and just aren't an asshole to people, then
Yeah.
you have a leg up on people who didn't show up or showed up and made a bad impression, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's interesting you brought up the thing about people in rock music because I remember coming across musicians or even songwriters like I guess the I guess who's somebody that actually that guy Max Martin, who's written for like
Oh,
Britney and
Max. Yeah.
I mean, he came from a hard rock background, and then funny enough, guys like, well, I mean, he's not technically a songwriter, but a guy like Michael Bolton, he started off as a hard rock guy, and then now we know him as the guy who sings all the all the hits. So
You know, it's funny. I don't think I knew that about Michael Bolton, but in my head, it works. I see it.
yeah,
Max Martin totally makes sense though, because if you had the experience of being in like a band, a gigging band for a good amount of time, bringing that experience to pop music is invaluable. Like you can hear it in Max's music. Like there's always everything, something is always, something melodic is always happening.
yeah.
And he's able to like weave it together, and he's not secret about it. People just don't want to believe it's that simple.
Well, Max Martin is a guy that people know him as the guy who wrote for the Backstreet Boys, or he more or less co-wrote, like say, like some of Taylor Swift's song, but you don't picture him as like the guy headbanging in front of a band. It's like
Right.
maybe if you're around in the '80s or something when he was actually doing that, then you would know it. But he hasn't done it in so long, so it's kind of hard to picture. I mean, even like what's his name? That guy Mutt Lang, who wrote all the Def
Yeah.
Leppard hits. Then he wrote with Shania Twain. So I mean,
Man, that those two, like Shania and Mutt, like they were magic together musically. I think
yeah,
I obviously personally that didn't work out, but like
yeah,
it was like, because I know it's funny because I just watched a documentary about Shania and that whole era of her three diamond albums, which is insane. And I think
yeah,
Come On Over is double diamond now, which
something like
is
that.
crazy. For the longest time, there's this narrative that like Mutt Lang was like the puppet master behind all Shania's hits and stuff, but it really came to light, in the last like decade or so, that it was the teamwork of them. Like he brought
Yeah,
what he brought, and she brought what she brought, and they made magic together. But yeah, he was Def Leppard. But you go back and listen to Def Leppard, you're like, they had melodies, you know.
yeah. Well, there's a huge difference between On Through the Night and say Pyromania and Hysteria. Hysteria was like the record for the longest time.
Yeah,
Or even, I mean, we can go into like Desmond Child with what he did with what Alice Cooper and Bon Jovi. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But then
yeah.
there's a lot of hard rock guys that can just write songs, and then now, there's a bunch of those guys doing country music because the country guys want to be like '80s rockers with just without the hair and all the makeup. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything's all the music genres are kind of cross pollinating. Like, there's a lot of rap and country music now, which I don't think I would have called in the '90s. You know?
yeah, I mean, look at Little Nas X. Who would have pictured, Billy Ray Cyrus and Trent Reznor standing on a stage with the three of them getting a country music award together?
Right.
That's something I would have never pictured. I'm looking and going, wait, where is this?
What timeline do we live in? I
What?
was actually really surprised, and happy, pleasantly surprised at like how we got like an artist out of Lil Nas X, because
Yeah,
it was I mean, I'll admit, with Old Town Road, I was like, this is a fun song, but meme songs come and go. And
yeah,
then Call Me by Your Name and his Montero album came out, and I was like, this guy he's an artist, like
yeah.
the full 360.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so I guess the people that you work for until you really do a deep dive and you're like, wait, what records did you work on? And then it's like, I thought you were a pop guy, and then you find out that they did records that you never pictured they ever did. So
Yeah. Oh, I just speaking of my content, the content that has like popped off recently has been me laying on this couch back here talking about 90s music
okay.
with Lucy, who's doing what she does now. And like yesterday I reposted a video that I had posted last year about Kesha's mom. You know Kesha, the
Yeah,
pop star, like
yeah,
her mom is a songwriter. Most widely, she was most known back in the day for writing a hit song for Dolly Parton. which like
Oh, okay.
once again, like people wouldn't have connected, but then Kesha's mom also went on to like co-write a lot of Kesha's hits too and stuff. So it's like in a way it was kind of good that she wasn't pigeonholed, because I don't know if you could go from like Old Flames by Dolly Parton to Your Love Is My Drug by Kesha, you know?
Yeah. I saw her perform Led Zeppelin at a charity event, so that's my picture of Kesha,
Nice.
other than the pop songs that she does.
Yeah.
So so what instrument did you start off playing? You were you a guitar player or
Nope. Piano.
always piano?
Yeah, and I say this to everybody. I wouldn't hire me for session work, but I write. So I can
Okay.
write. But see, that's another thing I owe to Ron Wasserman. I was so insecure, both by my own volition, but also people close to me, you know, like kind of keeping me at bay, like, you know, you're not really a great player. So you can only write as good as you can play. And Ron was like, he was like, that's kind of bullshit. Cause he introduces himself as a songwriter that plays piano and not a piano player that writes. And I was like, are you allowed to do that? And so ever since then, I've just been like, sure, I'm just gonna keep writing. You know, I don't need to be like, you know, like a concert pianist to
Yeah.
do what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, there's guys like Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue. Everyone knows him as the guy who plays bass for Motley Crue, but he has a library of songs that he's written for other people. And then there's always the snooty other people that go, "Well, you can barely play bass," but then it didn't stop him from writing great songs.
Right.
So he must know something that the other people don't know. So,
I mean, I posted this a while back, a few weeks. I don't know how long ago it was, but it got mixed reactions. It was basically like the only people who are elitist about music are those who don't understand it.
yeah,
Because like I don't know, because I think we all know someone that's like snooty about whatever their kind of music is, or the other end, you know, they're like, oh, jazz is boring. The thing is, if it connects with you or connects with a person, then it worked, no matter what
yeah.
it is, you know.
Okay. So from this point on, I mean, it's like, what are some of the things that you want to pursue that you haven't quite gotten to doing, or maybe just barely touched the tip of the iceberg?
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, I want to like live out my retired years, you know, writing pop songs for artists. Um, and they don't have to be major for the sense of my pride. They do have to be somewhat notable for the sense of my like living and paying bills. So we always joke about like me and a couple friends saying like we just need a bunch of us to get like one B side from Beyonce, and then we can have a modest living, because I don't need to be
Yeah,
rich. I just like need to not be, you know, scraping, you know, by and stuff. And I've been fortunate that that gamble I took back in 2020 of like ruining my life didn't do that. I'm not rich, but I've been paying my bills since, and so that's been pleasant surprise, you know. And even before we were recording, you mentioned, you know, people's side gigs in music. Like I was talking to my brother about this, and he was like, you know, about this big gig I was taking last week, and he was like, "Well, you'll be fine. You know, you have that Kim work ethic." I was like, "You call it work ethic? I call it we've never had options. We're an immigrant family, and
yeah,
so no generational wealth, no, you know, no one else in our family does the same trade. But at the same time, like I'm also not skilled in anything else. I don't know if you get this. I got a lot of people that think they just have presumptions because I'm ethnically Korean, but I grew up in Indiana. But I'm not good at like finances, business, marketing, math, any of that stuff. Like I just like do what I can. And
yeah.
this is all I can really do. But anyway, so when the writers and the actor strike happened, and there was just like suddenly no work in town, about a month or two before that all went down, my TikTok kind of popped off,
Oh, wow.
and that has covered my rent for the last 6 or 7 months, 6 months, 6 months. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was at VidCon when my first like paycheck from them came in, and I was like, oh damn, okay, this could work. I mean, like once again, it's not rich because I live in LA and have to pay like, you know, my left kidney
Yeah,
for rent, but I'm still, you know, I'm getting by, and like we have a pretty comfortable living here and stuff. So but anyway, like yeah, so at the end of the day, like it's kind of funny because even that, I kind of stumbled into doing something I like doing on TikTok that is also paying decently. Like I feel like that was both fortunate, but also I earned it because
Yeah.
we, you know, did YouTube for over 10 years, and we went back and forth on stuff that we didn't love doing that we did. And um it just kind of so happened on TikTok, like it's kind of funny. Growing up, I would just talk about my favorite records, and I, everyone told me to shut up, and no one cared. It was like these are inside thoughts, Rod. Like um, and then I don't know. I think it was turning 40 because it was literally a month after I turned 40. I like laid down on that couch and because my back hurt and I was on painkillers, and just started blabbing. Actually, speaking of Shania, talking about how Shania and Mutt wrote a song for Britney Spears, and I passed out. And when I woke up, the video had gone viral. Um, I had surpassed the follower count to or all the requirements to monetize, and then video I did speaking about Max Martin and Backstreet Boys like it went like 3.5 million or something overnight. And um so I just kept doing it because it was like it, I don't want to say easy is the right word, is like natural, because it's the same, even
Yeah.
though it's just me, like what I'd be normally doing at a party. It's I still have to record it. And I don't know, for anybody that hasn't ever been on camera, it's a weird thing. And I'm just
Yeah.
super introverted too. So I just have to like ignore that part of me when it's happening. So it takes a little bit of, it takes some battery, I guess, to do that. Um, but then beginning of this year, or actually no, in middle of this year. So I was at VidCon. I had posted a few videos about songs that accidentally became graduation songs in the 90s.
Okay.
One of them was Green Day's Good Riddance. And that video went like 5 million plus views. And like I would have never guessed. I mean, it's a great song. I didn't think that what I had to say was that insightful, but 5 million people like thought it did. So and
Yeah.
so that makes me happy that it doesn't really feel like a side gig, because if you watch them, it's usually like before I go to bed because I'm laying here in the dark. So I'm just kind of doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Uh So I wouldn't mind that still kind of going on at some pace in the future, whether it's on TikTok or another platform where I can just like talk about things like the songs I like, because that's my second favorite thing doing than writing songs. Besides that, I think the third thing I'd want to like do in the future is, and this is kind of a cop out, but it's definitely true, is whatever the thing that I don't know I enjoy yet that might not even exist. Because when I graduated college, YouTube was another year out, I think. And it was
Okay.
definitely it was another few years before it became a thing. So that wouldn't even been a possibility then. And then like when I moved to LA, TikTok wasn't a thing. Maybe
Yeah.
Musically was, but that was a whole different beast. But that wasn't what it is now. Uh and then when it did become a thing, I never saw myself on that. Like you ever see like a guy in his late 30s like dancing and lips? Well, I guess they are now, but at that time, and me, I didn't see that on that app. And so like I never want to what's the word? Like I always want to be open to like what I might not know is in store, because every
Yeah.
year surprises me, man. I'm currently working on my holiday cover for this year, and I legit last night I was like crying doing these guitar parts, like getting emotional about it. Every year I do like an old 90s or 80s like TV show theme, but in like a holiday style. And this year I picked a song specific to like stuff that's happened to me this year. And
Okay.
like it's like anything, like everybody else's life, it's ups and downs. But like I would never have been able to plan out the opportunities I've had the last 4 years for myself. So I always want to reserve a portion of my expectations for the unexpected. Um, because I don't know, maybe I'll like it, maybe
Yeah.
that's a part of me that there wasn't language for before then.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, you said you're a 90s kid, so what would be what would be your favorite some of your favorite 90s artists and or songs off the top of your
Ooh,
head?
my favorite 90s band off the top of my head was Collective Soul, or is Collective Soul. They're still around. I remember wearing out that Blue album. The World I Know is
Yeah.
one of my favorite songs ever. And I know people have done it before they did, but at the time I hadn't heard string arrangements in a rock band like that before. It was like kind of mind blowing. Trying to think of like songs. Man, I think the easiest way to, if you have TikTok, jump on my account, because it's literally just me gushing about every song I love. Um, and some of them, they like, I just did a video a few weeks ago about like the thong song. It's goofy, but like, hey man, it was effective. Like they had stuff going on in it. Trying to think of like one of the from the, especially from the 90s. I don't know, Collective Soul always comes back to mind because that's the album I always go back to. Shania Twain's like holy trinity of albums, was Woman and Me, Come On Over, and Up. Like those are like pop classics. Um I don't know if you can get more like polished songwriting than that. Like Shania and Mutt really, they intended to make like hit stadium records, and I feel like they accomplished that. Um and I'm trying to think like who else? Diane Warren actually was a big
Oh
hero
yeah,
of
yeah,
mine. I've literally run into her. She doesn't know who I am. Uh, like I'm literally like crossing Hollywood Boulevard. She's like running out of a building and like bumped into her. But I remember growing up, especially as a '90s kid, like I want to be her.
yeah,
Not everybody knows her, but she was responsible. She still is responsible for a lot of hit songs. Actually, she has a new song on the Taylor Swift re-release in 1989.
okay,
It was a vault track. Imagine being such a big pop star that you could shelf a Diane Warren song. That's insane.
yeah,
But I love the idea that there's this really talented songwriter that wrote "I Don't Want to Miss a Thing" and "How Do I Live" in her basement piano, and these actual rock stars and pop stars like made them hits. To me, that's like the perfect formula, because like I don't think I'm a like a pop star or ever had that in the making, but like I would love to be part of that, process. So I'm a big fan of it. Music was like one of my closest friends growing up.
yeah, yeah. I always, whenever I hear Diane Warren's name, I can't remember half the songs that she's written, but then I don't want to miss the thing is definitely one of those songs that,
Mhm.
because everyone knows that's the first Aerosmith song they didn't write. So because
Yeah,
they
it's
wrote
also their first number one.
yeah, well they wrote the majority of their songs, their hits, and then I don't think they had any number ones, but then they kind of hit a wall and they're like, okay, Diane Warren, you're coming in. So
So what's funny? I didn't know that Diane Warren wrote "I Could Not Ask for More" by Edwin McCain, and
oh really?
that I should have known that. That's something that I should have. Maybe it's just because I didn't own his full album back then. But I did a video about that song on TikTok, and then Edwin DM'd me.
Oh okay.
He's so cool. I froze because I didn't. That was the beginning of like some of these 90s artists starting to get in touch with me. He was super nice. He didn't know that I had also already recorded a video about "I'll Be," and I made some observations about that song that I was kind of right about. That he told me the whole story in the DMs, and but I could not ask for more. I forget if he told this in our discussion or a separate post, because he's very active on TikTok too,
Okay.
about how he was kind of like Aerosmith, where he writes his own songs. He's a songwriter. He's still touring
Yeah.
to this day. But then his label was like, "You're going to do this Diane Warren song because she's the it girl," and he didn't want to do it. And then it was for like a Disney or Nickelodeon soundtrack, and he's like, "Sure, we'll do it for the paycheck," and it becoming his like second biggest hit.
Oh wow. It's
The same,
yeah, it's amazing when you do these videos and then all of a sudden the actual person's like watching going, huh, this, and then they throw in their 2 cents and then it kind of changes the dynamics of the analysis of the song. So
Yeah. Edwin, it was nice because, I don't really research any of the things I talk about. I just go off memories from when I was in high schools.
yeah.
And so I could be wrong. I acknowledge that. But he was like, yeah, that's kind of how it was. And these are the little parts that, no one else would have known about. And actually Diane, I forget what it was. I think she like I think she like liked a post or something, and I just like
Okay.
I almost passed out. I think it was about how do I live. And then I like was debating. You might have seen this on Facebook. I made like friends only posts of like, oh my god, this woman that I idolized growing up is like she like liked one of my. She didn't even comment on it. She like liked one of my posts or whatever, and a dozen different friends were like, dude, just say something to her. So I like took like a day and like built up the courage to say something to her. So I like DM'd her about like everything, and then she just like hearted it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's
another. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. These are the things, the magical moments you save till until you go to the NAM show, and then
All
it's
right,
like you experience it, and then you have like a whole bunch of eyewitnesses watching you freaking out. So
all right, yeah. Another songwriter that is more of an early 2000s writer that I think not as many people know is Gordy Sampson. Um, no, I've seen him play live once. I don't know him personally, so I don't
Mhm.
know, anything besides his music. But like he's kind of like another like I aspire to be like that because he's a performer, but he wrote a ton of country hits, and
Okay.
I don't know what he's up to these days, but at the time when I first started following him, he was like doing shows like when he wanted to, you know,
Oh,
if
okay.
he wanted to. But he was like writing hit songs for Carrie Underwood. He wrote or one of the co-writers on Jesus Take the Wheels, one of his first big hits. And then I started diving into his own releases, and he's great. So I like that dynamic of like, yeah, these songwriters like the Diane Warrens and Gordy Sampsons of the world and stuff. Like I want to be that, I want to write the song and
Yeah.
then send it with a rock group to go, give it wings.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that, well, the guys that you just named are still going, but then I guess the more recent ones are mostly like, I don't know, people from a well-known band. They're just writing songs for other people. So, and some are hits and some are, they're just kind of there. So,
Speaking of, and this is not a 90s band or artist, but Justin Tranter.
yeah.
I remember following their band Semi Precious Weapons back in Lady Gaga days and stuff because I
Yeah.
back then I was on the East Coast, so I don't think we ever shared a bill together, but we were in the same circles. And uh like that band, man, it, if anybody listening wants to like see some of the most like outrageous like glam rock, I guess is maybe the best way to
Yeah.
describe it. It's a really really cool stuff. um and that band, like they should have been like Lady Gaga, like massive for whatever reasons, it didn't pan out for them. But Justin has
Yeah.
gone on to write so many hit songs, holy cow.
Like Bieber or something, right?
Justin Bieber, Gwen Stefani, I think Selena Gomez. I think
Yeah.
Justin's first big hit was Centuries by Fall Out Boy. Once again, another like person that came from rock, wrote pop music, got a hit with rock. and, um and also Ryan Tedder is another great songwriter that came from a
Yeah.
band. Um Man, at this point I'm just like naming all the people my friend Daniel's interviewed on his podcast. But
Yeah, I saw Semi Precious Weapons once in LA and another time at South by Southwest, which ironically Lady Gaga showed up, and then you know how Austin is. They don't do crowd control very well. So then when somebody famous comes and then everyone's like, oh crap, and everyone decides to raid the door and then I'm a
yeah,
riot
yeah.
on it. So that's my Semi Precious Weapons moment.
I
I
never
heard
got to
them.
see them live.
I heard them. I couldn't quite see over all the people, but
Right.
yeah, so I mean there's a lot of these bands. I mean, um well for a while, what's the name? That guy Ben Moody who was in Evanescence,
Yes.
he wrote the Fallen record. I mean, you know what happened with
Yep.
that band. They're like what, at least 10 times platinum.
Yeah, that Fallen album is insanely successful and actually really pivotal and like influential for a lot of current music.
Yeah. I think he wrote songs for like Kelly Clarkson and I forget
Avril
who else.
Lavigne.
Yeah, and I think he did some stuff for Lindsay Lohan when she was still doing music. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I think he worked with David Hodges, who also was in Evanescence.
yeah.
And didn't all of them also form another like Evanescence clone band with a
Yeah.
gal that was on American Idol? We Are the
Yeah,
Fallen.
yeah.
I love that level of pettiness.
Well, it was supposed to be called The Fallen, but then some other band had the name, so they wouldn't let. They were about to sue, so they're like, They added the "we are" part, so
Yeah.
to
Well, I
avoid a
just love it.
lawsuit.
I just love that, like, the biggest Evanescence record was, Fallen, and then they come out like, oh well, we're called We Are the Fallen.
Well, I guess there's a whole nother backstory with their relations with Amy Lee, which that's a whole nother story. But
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
yeah, I guess they didn't get along, and after the one record when you are shown the door, I mean, it's like here comes We're the Fallen. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, but Ben, I don't know what he's done lately. Oh, he also worked with Anastasia, I think. So speaking of another pop artist, the
okay,
that a rock guy wrote with.
is that the kind of thing you'd like to do in the future, like write for other people as well, or
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like that's like my number one goal is like write for
okay,
artists. Of pretty much anything I uh could try. I want to the one of I think it might have been the first songwriting gig I got when I decided to give this a go was a J-pop song for an
okay,
anime. And I don't speak Japanese, and my family's from Korea, so I'm like almost more further removed from that, and I don't speak Korean either. So I was working with the singer who is bilingual, and it was like a really cool experience. I got to like write all the music. We did drafts of lyrics in English, and then she
mhm,
helped like localize them because she's like, "Oh, this concept isn't really a Japanese thing. Like it was an American phrase, but it doesn't translate to this." And it was a cool process. I think it debuted at like a million or so hits or streams or whatever and stuff. And put her on the map. And like I haven't done another bilingual thing since then, but like now I know that that's a fun experience when you're with the right people. So
yeah,
I want to like once again I want to leave that door open for stuff that I don't know. Like yeah, I would love to whoever the next Avril Lavigne or Kelly Clarkson is. I would love to be in that writer's room crafting some
yeah,
songs.
okay. All right, so I guess if people want to find out more about you and check out your videos, where can they find you?
The easiest cheat code is rodkim.com. That has links to like all my other stuff on there. My biggest platform now, and where you may have already seen me, because a lot of people have seen these videos, is from TikTok, and that's Rodkim Rocks. This is the first time I've been on a social media platform where my friends are getting sent stuff unsolicited, like from my account and stuff, and uh, like I was at now I'm at conventions and things, and people know me. Oh, you're the guy that talked about the Backstreet Boys video in the dark. Like, yeah, that was me. um, then if you want to kind of see like the rest of the LA stuff I'm into, I have my Instagram account, and it is just like I'm out at this thing now. And my the YouTube channel that had all the YouTube stuff I was talking about today is RKVC. My personal
Okay.
channel is just Rod Kim. It's not very big at all. I think I just cracked 1,000 subscribers on that channel. RKVC has like 17,000 now, but my personal channel only has like 1,000. But like I'm just kind of having fun on there. Like I think the last video I posted a bunch of shorts on there, but the last long form video I posted was me telling my parents like all the things I got away with when I was a teenager, but
Oh, I saw
30,
that. Yeah.
30 years later. Yeah, that was fun because they didn't know what was coming. Yeah, and then I do have solo projects out on like Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff, and just Rod Kim. Uh the little last I hate when people do this, but little asterisks, like this is I'm not like trying to make a hit record or whatever. Like that was just purely for me, especially the last album I made, Handsome Nostalgia. That was just me like reclaiming my youth because I wanted to
Yeah.
write some records for myself.
Well, when you say that, and then next thing you know, it's like it's a lot bigger deal than you last remembered.
You know what? Now that you say that, try not to give too much away about this thing I'm working on right now. In broad terms, I was this big project that I got proposed to do last week. Um, the not the music director, but like the corporate clients that were their bosses. We told them like send over like a spreadsheet of like 20 reference tracks or songs or things that you like, just so you can get a vibe. It's like a audio mood board.
Hmm.
Kid you not, they didn't even know I clicked on the first song. It was one of mine from 4 years ago. Um, and I was like, oh, very funny, guys. They were like, what? I was like, this is me. And they didn't know. I didn't think of that. They didn't know because I wasn't credited on it. But
Mm,
that was mine. So I was like, okay, I feel it. So so you were kind of right. Like you don't ever know because I put I put something out there without the intention of it doing anything, and it landed me like the biggest gig of my life. So
yeah. There's too many cases of reverse psychology, and it's not just some weird coincidence because everyone threatens like, yeah, I just threw it in there to see if they're paying attention, and then the next thing you know, that's the thing that people want.
yeah,
So I mean, I don't know. There's something in the air, I guess. So
yeah. Well, also like once again, if you're in that hustle stage, I guess you put enough stuff out there, then was one of those messages in a bottle is going to come back to you, right?
yeah, you know that song, the one that's like, yeah, that one's like, yeah, that one. Do you have any more songs that sound like that? And you're like, that's my song. He's like, I know. Do you have more songs like that? And then
Yeah.
it gets to be in one of those weird, awkward stages when you're like, I have I have some other songs that sound more like what you want. Like, no, I don't want that one. So
Yeah, well, in this case though, the people who wanted sent the reference tracks didn't know that that was me. It made sense of where they got it because we're kind of in like, you know, we're in LA, that similar circle or whatever.
yeah,
But I like any doubt I had in myself to be able to do the project was like washed away at that point. I was like that the nervousness turned into confidence. It's like, okay, I can do this because they're literally asking for me.
yeah. All right, cool. Anything else you want to add that you're
This is
coming up?
it's not music related, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I have a podcast with my buddy John, JC. We watched the 92 X-Men series and
Okay.
talk about it. So if you're into like 90s cartoons and superheroes, then we literally just watch it. I don't really know. I enjoy comic books and Marvel and the X-Men, but I don't know like an in-depth lore from the comic books, but John does. And so much of it is him explaining stuff to me and me trying my best to understand and him not punching me through the screen. This has been pretty fun. We've had some great guests on there. We got done with the whole 92 series, and we ended that by having an interview with the original showrunners of the show. And now we're
Oh,
watching
nice.
X-Men Evolution. And we just a couple weeks ago interviewed one of the main directors of X-Men Evolution. So it's been a
Okay.
good like you know non-music kind of project to just talk about and something else I loved.
All right, cool.